Hi, it's Jen from Shabby Fabrics, back with the Pint Size Table Runner, and this time it's for May. I hinted last month that April showers do bring May flowers, and they did. In fact, a basket full of flowers for our amazing moms. Mother's Day, of course, happening in May. Such a wonderful holiday. We get to celebrate our moms. And so if you're just now maybe found this video on YouTube, we started this series a couple months ago in February. And of course, we'll be doing a project each month for 12 months, finishing up actually in January of 2023, where you're able to either get the kit, which we have everything included, even the backing, pre-fused laser cut applique, or if you want to just craft at home with your stash of fabric, we absolutely love that. We welcome that. And we have a free download for you to grab. It's free for a limited time. After a little bit of time has passed, we'll be taking that down and offering that as a paid pattern, of course, with full color, full size diagrams, and all of those wonderful things we all love. So this is actually, the collection is Anne of Green Gables by Riley Blake. I just love the color, the symphony of the range of purples and those sagey greens. I thought it was perfect for our pint size for May. So we'll jump right into this. Now, in the previous months, we've always had the applique just on the two ends, but this time I couldn't resist adding pre-fused laser cut applique for those handles, making it so much easier. So one of the first things that you'll do, of course, you're going to size those fabrics, press them out really well, grab that sharp blade. You're going to cut two squares that are your background, out of your background fabric here, to 5 7/8. Be right on the mark of that, if not just a little bit. Do an honest 5 7/8. Don't go short of that. That's going to be very important. And that's because that kind of needs to fit in there just so. So you'll take your square, and I simply cut that on a diagonal, and I ended up with two pieces. And you'll do that again with another 5 7/8 inch square. That'll result in, of course, 4 pieces together. And we're just going to take our fusible applique piece, peel off that paper backing. You could either eyeball that, or on our assembly diagram, we have that little piece right there in the corner where you can simply lay that onto your light box. Put your fabric in that corner. Notice that fits just beautifully in that wedge. That's why I wanted you to cut that very precisely at the 5 7/8. Everything, isn't it nice when it just fits perfectly? It's like, yes, I'm in the right spot. And you can lay that handle on. And then, of course, you need to move that off your light box, iron that down, and then we use the lighter color to go ahead and stitch around that. And you will need to stitch around all 4 of those now, because that, of course, will be, that doesn't want to turn off. I'll put that away for now. We'll be using that a little bit later on, and I'll put that away. So you just complete 4 of those and set those off to the side. Now we start working in this portion of the block, and let's start off with those half square triangles. We're going to give you the chance to upsize that. So you'll be cutting your fabrics per the size in your pattern. And just like we've done half square triangles in the past, we drew on the line, and I simply sewed a 1/4 inch on either side. You've seen me do that before. And I'll now cut that apart. I'm going to increase the temperature on my iron. I had that on a medium setting because I was using a fusible webbing product on the back of those handles. So you will be kind of in and out of those iron settings, always medium when you're doing the fusible applique. And of course, when we're doing our patchwork and piecing, we want that on that full hot setting. Once we have this here, I'm going to actually go ahead and press this open. I want you to see the back of my block right now. We, of course, got a chance to make the sample quilt and then do our preparation for video. And we just discovered that certain seams being pressed open led to a flatter block in the end, which of course is something that we desire. So many times when I'm making half square triangles, I just by default press to the dark. But Bethany, who was actually put the project together and helped get all the video preparation ready for me today, definitely said, hey, let them know to press these seams open. So I want to give you a good glance at the back of that. You can see a lot of seams open except kind of down in here. So I'll just flip that back over. So we have that with our little flaps there, and I can't help it. I got to trim them off right away. Now I know they're going to get trimmed off because I'm going to square this thing up, but still I just feel the need to go ahead and do that. So at this point, what the measurement that we gave you in your pattern for your half square triangles, your squares going into that were 3.5 inches. This ultimately sewn into the project right here is 2.5 inches. So we need to square this up to 3. We gave you a little bit of a bigger piece because right now this is measuring a little bit bigger than that by about 1/8. Whenever you're going to square up something, you want to be able to square up everywhere on all 4 sides. So the first thing I'm going to do just to kind of get this one kind of kicked off, I'm scooting up, I'm lining up this line right here. This ruler in this project is invaluable. This is the 4.5 by 8.5. And right now, the only thing I'm really looking for, I'm on my diagonal and I'm just squeezing up into these corners where I'm able to trim off even just a little bit. That's the only thing I'm looking for at this moment. Let me make myself some space. I am going to turn this mat. And we now know that these are our 2 sides that are right there. Those 2 sides that I just did, and let's just move that right there and right there. So I now know, let's put that over on, might be easier for you to see this on the white line. Plus now there's my 3. I'm squaring this up to 3. To see how I wanted you to see the white line. It's easier from the overhead for you to see that. But I also want to be looking at the number 3. I know that's where I'm going. That's our goal. So I'm lined up with the 3. I'm lined up with this 3. And I have this beautiful white diagonal line that says, yes, you are in the right place to get that cut. So I'm going to make that, and I don't even want to let go. I'm just going to go straight across the top with that. So that's the first step we want to take in getting a really solid half square triangle that at this time is measuring 3 inches. Let me put that aside for the moment. So our next step, we're going to build this, kind of build this block actually kind of from the inside out. The next thing we'll do here, and this is just such a beautiful fabric, we will once again be placing this straight edge and cutting very precisely from corner to corner. Let me just show you where we are in the pattern real quick so you can kind of follow along. And we'll talk about star singles. Hey, you know, I'm going to talk about star singles right now. The step you just saw me do with 2 squares, oversized, they were cut to 3.5 initially, right side together with the drawn line. I sewed 1/4 inch on the either side of that. That was prepared in advance. And then in the end, I trimmed up. If you don't even want to deal with that, you can buy the 2.5 inch star single paper. Each paper allows you to sew on the paper, and you don't have to square up anything. It just is. So each sheet of star singles actually yields 8 half square triangles. Notice in our project we only have 4. That's why we took 1 sheet and we simply cut it in half. So it's a really neat option for you if you're like, I just don't like squaring up. I'm not comfortable with that. Maybe I don't want to invest in a spinning mat, and you don't have to invest in a spinning mat to square up. It's a nice feature, but it's not necessary to do the technique I just did. But if you want to make 8 half square triangles, you use the whole sheet. If you only want to make 4 half square triangles, which is all we need in this project, you simply cut exactly on that line. We took our same fabrics, both of them, right side together, pinned our paper on. We sewed on the dash line with a much shortened stitch length, like at about a 1.5. And then you just cut on the solid lines. So in that instance, in fact, let me just do this really quick. I want to show you one. I want to show you how When you use the star singles, they are absolutely on the mark, no upsize needed. So now you just roll this, kind of fold it back. That shortened stitch length really kind of perforates the paper. And we're going to measure this. We're going to measure this together here. This is a test. Let's see. Let's see just how accurate these are. We'll do the same thing. We'll press this open. Star singles, by the way, come in a variety of sizes, and you always want to choose. I found this confusing at first because I'm so used to thinking, okay, well, if I start with this size, then I have to square this up. What size do I buy? Easy, easy. What size is the finished half square triangles you want to make? If you want to have that half square triangle finish into your project at 2 inches, you buy 2-inch paper. If in this instance, you want that to be the 2.5 because that's the size this ends up being into the project. Now, at this point, before it's sewn into the project, this little course should measure 3. So let's see if we got there. Isn't that amazing? Absolutely on the mark. So wonderful time saver. Okay, so now you know that's an option for you. We cut our fabrics here. We're now dealing with bias. Remember I talked about, using that sizing. Sizing helps stabilize fabrics, especially when they're going to be sewn on the bias. So you can see here, this is what's coming. I want to show you this. This one's already been trimmed up, but I'm going to show you this is where we're going. It doesn't matter which side you put on first. We can certainly place this one right side together. I want to make sure that, I want that to be pressed a little better. See how it's kind of crowning? That gives me a clue that I probably should have pressed that just a little bit better. And we're definitely going to avoid any swishing or movement. It's just going to be a straight press down. Hey, I just noticed my rotary cutter actually matches my project today. Isn't that, it's kind of nice. The total coordinated sewing room, I love that. All right, so let's reacclimate. So we will place that right side together, and we need to sew 1/4 inch seam allowance from here to here. Let's go do that together. This is another moment I remember reminding myself. My instinct is to press out, but I noticed Bethany pressed open. And so I think that's to reduce just a lot of bulk coming together here. So we'll warm that up. We're going to press that seam open. Let that sit there. I know that looks weird. We're going to let that live like that. Now let's reacclimate where we are. And here comes this one. So we know we need to, I'm going to flip that around so it looks a little more natural to me. There we go. So I'm going to certainly start sewing from here, right side together. And again, 1/4 inch. Okay, let's warm that up. I'm going to press that open. I'm going to, actually I can trim that off. No, I want to trim that off now, don't I? Let's trim off that extra right there. We don't want to trap that back there. Let's press that open. I'm going to trim off that extra one too. Let's just do that. The less bulk in a project and seams, the better. And we'll press that open. Okay. I mentioned that that 4.5 by 8.5 inch ruler was going to be invaluable. And you're going to see why. It's going to really have a moment here. You're going to go, oh my gosh. Creative Grid has really thought this through, and they have. Notice how this is more than 1/4 inch. Mine's been trimmed down. Let's look at some of the, besides this just being a great size, look at this from the overhead. This is giving us such an incredible guidance. Do you look how our kind of light orchid is? It's like this ruler knew this project was coming to life. It has the perfect triangle right here. We have guidance right here and guidance right here. This square that I had you cut, this beautiful, this color here, was slightly oversized so that we again can get that perfect edge going into our basket block so everything just clicks together. So I'm lined up here, here, and here. We're going to hold steady. Let me just, boy, measure a couple times, cut once. Like I moved. There we go. Just slightly. Let me try that. There we go. Okay, so this is now the bottom part of our basket. So I got ahead here. Let's see where we are. We can now, whether you do the bottom portion, no, we definitely need to do the top portion. Let's add that bottom portion. I was going to give you an option, no option. We got to go in this sequence now. That part that we were very careful about cutting to our, exactly, it's how that just clicks like a puzzle. That's why we slightly oversize these and allow you that chance to trim up with that 4.5 by 8.5 or whatever rule you want to use, so that now everything is clicking together beautifully. I'm going to sew from this side. I want to get control of that seam right there. I want to have that in my vantage point. And I'm going to probably use, be very careful about that point not kind of diving into my feed dog. Some people like to use something called a starter strip. And I don't think I have an extra piece of fabric with me to do that, where you kind of just start sewing onto that fabric and then come onto your project. It seems to eliminate the chance for that fabric to kind of dive into that feed dog, but let's give it a try. We need to sew a very good, solid 1/4 inch seam. So once again, we will press open. Let's see how our basket block is doing here. I don't know why purple seems to be the color associated with Mother's Day. I've never known why that is, but it just seems to be. Okay. These little blocks, some of these little ones take a little extra effort to make. And boy, I think they're worth it though. It's so cute sewn into the project. And let's give that a press from this side. And we will trim that off. Maybe I'll use a rotary cutter for that. those extra pieces. That's what, when you press seams open, they kind of splay out like that. So you've got the main part of the block done at this point. Now let's look at our corners here. So from our background fabric, see, here's where we are. In fact, I'll turn it so it matches what we have. We have our piece D, which is here, and we're just going to sew that onto the bottom, okay? And then there's a longer piece, but there's another piece that looks like this. So I know that looks a little strange right now. So this piece is going to come on to the left, so I can just show you where we're headed. And the other piece is going to be along here. So at the same time, I'm just going to sew this one on here and this one on here. So let's just do that at the same time. And for our step 4, they're saying again to press open. Let's have a look at that real quick. So once again, those are pressed open. Just want to confirm that. And the same here. So our step 5 has us sewing. Our block is like this. We'll be sewing that on there, right side together. You know, I look at the back here. What's kind of nice about that is I have that point right there that's going to drive my needle right into that spot. I'm certainly going to want to hit that or slightly to the right of that. So I'm going to definitely be sewing from this side, pinning well in those 2 corners, here and here. We certainly got to hit that. And right in the middle. Okay, here we go. This is when we begin to press to the outside. So let's just take a look at that. So here's our block. This is when we do start to press out there to the sides. Just repressing some of those other seams. Pressing. It's another thing, now that I'm kind of pressing. When I first started quilting, I'm like, what is this big deal about pressing? I'm just going to press it any way I want. And I did. And my blocks reflected it. They were not so good. Having interlocking seams or pressing seams in a certain orientation to achieve a flatter block is worth the time to contemplate. Is there a good way to press that? Sometimes there isn't, but many times there is. This now will come on this side, and again, I will just place this right side together. I'll just go, let's just examine that. Again, I'm going to sew from this side. I've got this seam that could roll back on me. I have a lot going on here, and here I only have that. So I'll go ahead and pin this well. I'll get that, take that to the sewing machine with my 1/4 inch seam allowance. I'll come back, and then we're going to talk about this really neat corner, how we're going to manage that, and a specific technique we will take from actually the back side of the block, maybe something you've never seen before. So I'll be right back. So let's press that one to the outside like our sample block here. I talked about a technique where you can be glancing at the back. Well, before I get to that step though, you can see we need to do something in the corner to get to this place. And that's basically kind of snowball the corner. You're going to take your 2.5 inch square. You can draw the line corner to corner, which I've done, and place that in the corner. The main thing you want to be sure of, and this is really going to depend on your quilt block. In fact, let's just press that in, not press that in place, but pin that in place. We know that when you sew corner to corner and you flip, that this is what you're going to get right there. If you are satisfied that you're going to hit that point perfectly, you don't really need to be doing any kind of checking from the back. Some people, because you're not really certain where that's going to hit, do look in the back and they know that that point is where you need to cross. This is measured up. Let's look at the pattern. This is measuring from here to here 2.5 inches, and from here 2.5 and 2.5. You see how from this flap makes me hard to see from the overhead, and this one, that when we lay a ruler from that point to that point, we can draw the line. And sew from the back, right? And now you will know you're going to hit that point. So that's just an option. I feel confident though, that when I kind of know that when I peel that back, if I sew on that line, not to the right of that, but on that line, I'm going to be good. Just an option that we included in the pattern if you would like to take that option. Or another check. Let's go sew on the line. And before you cut anything, trust me, I've done this before where I'm like, oh yes, I have that. And right away I go grab my ruler and I trim it away and I'm like, oh no, I missed that point. Where's that seam ripper again? I've just learned to look, check, see if I did hit that point. And we did. We're happy with that. Let's still go ahead pressing that to the outside. Just making double sure. And once you're satisfied, of course, that's a lot of bulk that we will now trim away. I'm not sure I really love when I can start graduating down in rulers and it's not so bulky in my hands with a bigger ruler. And we will trim that away and just repress. That's your block. How fun is that? You know, if you're fairly new to piecing, maybe you grab the kit, just practice on some scrap fabric first. You know, that's where you can just relax, allow yourself the grace to make mistakes, or it's like, hey, I took too healthy of a seam allowance or too small of a seam allowance. Because this block very much depends on a very accurate quarter seam allowance. So now we would, of course, create our 4 blocks. We couldn't resist the sashing. I've done that. I did that last month. I think I did that in March as well. I didn't do that in February. And then that cute little cornerstone is again that fabric. So we have, these are of course 1 inch by 6.5, pressing your seams toward the sashing on this, and then that one also pressing toward the sashing. You're going to assemble this unit here, and now that goes off to the side. So with our applique, just like we've done in the past, that's when we're grabbing for the light box. That's when we are using that assembly diagram to assist us. And that's when we're like, I am so glad I have a laser cut kit. I don't have to be tracing that. If you are going to be doing this from home, of course, you'd want to be grabbing that heat and bond light or whatever that is, and going ahead and tracing on that drawn line, roughly cutting that around, ironing that to the back of your fabric. If you'll be joining us for the kit, this is what that applique unit will look like. Your pieces, of course, will be cut out for you. Let me just move some of this out of our way. And this is where we like to use this, especially for the center one here. Let me just grab that out. Bring that heat back to medium. I always have to remind myself about that. And you can see our pieces. Of course, we have our flowers. We've already kind of done those ahead of time. I'll just do this one with you. Piece 3, 4, 5, and 6. Let's do that together. So your sequence will be your assembly diagram, your applique mat, and we will get our light box going. It's very dim to me, but to you. At home, it may be quite bright, but you can, of course, bring up that brightness. You can see how this is the wafer one, and we're kind of almost on the outside limit of what this can handle. The wafer 2 would be better. But, you know, at this point, we're not going to be ironing on our light box. We're just using it for general guidance. So we said that we're going to be doing this flower. So let me just start there, and then we'll go back and we'll put everything down together. Again, just to remove the fusible webbing, just pull this back and the paper should release. And we'll put our leaves down first. Boy, I love it. The more pieces in a project, the more I appreciate the laser cut, because I just want to jump into the fun. I want to jump into the parts that I enjoy the most. Let's see here. And we don't have a completely symmetrical flower, which we thought was fun. So now you just have to kind of rotate that, and that's how you do it. You just rotate it until it says, I think that's the spot. I think that was that spot. And it's a flower, right? Does yours have to match ours exactly as far as the rotation? No. But if you want it to, you just kind of have to keep, there's the spot. There we go. Notice I can push down on this. This mat has a tackiness to it that I love. I'm going to move that off to the side. We are going to iron this down together. Now I can't see the center very good without turning this up brighter. So I'm just going to shoot for the middle. That seems to make sense to me. And we will just move this off to our mat, and the iron will come straight down. In the meantime, you know, while that's ironing and bonding together, you could be peeling maybe the paper off the other pieces. Very important, don't do what I did when I first got my applique fusing mat. I was so excited to see it all bond together. Like while it was, I just yanked it right off while it was still hot. It needs to cool down for that to all kind of just gel together and be one unit. Once that is cooled down, and I think we're probably pretty close that we can pull that away. Still a little warm to the touch. I'm pushing my luck. Let's let that sit there. Okay, while that's cooling down, background. We have our background cut exactly to size, kind of like last month I talked about. You can leave your background oversized if it's coming to you in the kit, and you simply put the applique down, and it won't fit inside this perfect saddle and frame. It's going to be a little bit bigger than that. You can either maybe draw that frame, or you're kind of looking through that and putting your scallop pieces and your flowers, and then stitching everything down with your thread set, and then going back later. You can. This isn't a lot of stitching though of the applique. I would simply cut on this one it to the exact size, so you don't have to go back later. Now we know this is going to be going down, and of course our other flowers. I think those are symmetrical. Let's see, maybe they're not. And now I think this has cooled down plenty for us. Isn't that amazing? One thing, right? It was 4 things, now it's 1. And we are just going to move that off. I'm going to put that on an angle so it fits a little better. Isn't that fun? I have, in some of my more intricate projects where I've done the all the tracing, it took me a week to do as a very elaborate block in the month. One of my earlier projects, when I was just learning how. So I just appreciate, I'm busy. We're all so busy that if we can skip a step and get right into the fun, I think that's very much worth it. Okay, and now we have our beautiful applique. And of course, just like before, this is where we get to decide with our beautiful thread set. And I just love these colors. I mean, they're just so incredible with the project. Stitching that down, maybe a straight edge blanket stitch, maybe that's a zigzag, whatever you want to do, get those done. And that's where we will sew those to the ends. You could press toward the applique or press toward the patchwork. I think probably pressing toward the patchwork at this point. And then of course layering in our backing. We'll try to get a close-up. Bethany did some fun stitching inside the basket this time, kind of the half square triangle there. She used the width of the presser foot to kind of be her guide. I asked her, did you draw a line? She said no. She cut a line going with the sewing machine and then used kind of the width of that presser foot, the 57D, I think, and then just did something fun. You know what, that's where you can just choose whatever you want to do. And of course, here comes that binding and you have something fun to display or maybe give to your mom as a gift for Mother's Day. So thanks for giving me part of your day. I am excited. The June Pint Size Table Runner, I have a smile on my face. Something happens in June, I'll give you a little hint, that I don't really do any other time of the year, and I do it with my family up in a place called Green Bluff. We go up there to a farm. There's something we do up there. So maybe you're getting some clues of what that might be, but join me for that one. You don't want to miss out. Really fun, really classic block coming your way for Pint Size Table Runner for June. But for now, thanks for giving me part of your day, and I'll see you soon.